The twin moons were rising above the metal rooftops of the alien colony when Lyra walked home from the market, her small basket in hand. The streetlights flickered, and the cold wind brushed against her face. People around her whispered just loud enough for her to hear. "Look, there she is, the heavy one. She eats too much. No one will ever love someone like her." She kept walking, pretending not to hear. But inside, her heart felt heavier than her body. Every step echoed with their laughter. Lyra was not ugly. Her eyes were soft, her voice gentle, and her smile kind. But on this world, Zalara, beauty meant perfection. Thin, tall, flawless. And Lyra was none of those things. She worked as a parts cleaner in a small repair shop, fixing broken machines from the human war years ago. Most people ignored her, except when they wanted to make fun of her. Every evening she sat by her little window looking up at the stars. Her small metal house was quiet, filled with humming machines and the soft sound of the wind outside. She would hold a mug of hot herbal tea and whisper, "Maybe someone, somewhere, will see me for who I am." But no one ever came. One night, when the colony lights went out due to a power cut, Lyra sat in darkness listening to the distant thunder. Rain began to fall, slow and heavy. It tapped against her window like small fingers. She sighed, stood up, and pulled her blanket tighter. "Another lonely night," she murmured. Suddenly, a knock echoed through the silence. Knock, knock. Her heart jumped. She froze. No one ever visited her. Not neighbors. Not friends. She had none. She hesitated, then slowly walked toward the door. Another knock came, harder this time. Thump, thump. She pressed her ear against the cold metal. "Who's there?" she asked, her voice shaking slightly. For a moment there was no reply, only the sound of rain and thunder outside. Then a low, tired voice said, "Please, I just need a place to rest." It was a man's voice, deep, human. Lyra blinked. A human? There hadn't been humans on Zalara for years. Not since the Great War ended. The government said all humans were gone, either dead or taken back to Earth. Her hand trembled as she unlocked the door. The metal panel slid open with a hiss. Standing there in the rain was a tall man wearing a torn, mud-covered jacket. His hair was gray and messy, and his face looked like it had seen too many battles. His right arm was bleeding, wrapped in a dirty cloth. His eyes met hers, and for the first time in years, someone didn't look at her with disgust or laughter. He looked at her like a person. "I'm sorry," he said weakly. "I didn't mean to scare you. My ship crashed outside the colony. I just need shelter." Lyra's first instinct was fear. Harboring a human could mean punishment. But something about his voice, so tired, so lonely, made her heart ache. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Come in." He stepped inside slowly, dripping water onto her floor. She gave him a towel, and he thanked her softly. When he smiled, it was small, almost shy. "What's your name?" she asked. "John," he said. "And yours?" "Lyra." He looked surprised. "Lyra?" His voice trembled slightly. "That name saved my life once." She frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" But before he could answer, he suddenly collapsed on her floor. Lyra gasped and knelt beside him. His breathing was rough. The bandage around his arm was soaked with blood. She quickly ran to her cupboard, pulled out an old medkit, and began cleaning his wound. Her hands shook as she worked. "You poor thing," she whispered. "You'll be okay." John's eyes fluttered open for a moment. "Thank you, Lyra," he murmured before losing consciousness again. She stared at him, wondering how a human soldier ended up at her door. Outside, the rain kept falling harder, thunder shaking the ground. She dragged a blanket over him and sat beside him quietly, watching the storm through her window. Her heart was racing, but not from fear, something else, something warm. For the first time in years, her house wasn't empty. Someone was there, someone who didn't laugh at her, didn't insult her. But deep inside, she also felt uneasy. Who was this man? Why did he know her name? And what did he mean when he said, "Your name saved my life once"? Outside, a flash of lightning lit up the sky. Lyra looked down at John's sleeping face and whispered, "Maybe tonight the stars finally answered me." When the morning light touched Lyra's window, the storm was gone. The air smelled of wet metal and burnt smoke. The human John was still lying on her floor, wrapped in her blanket, breathing slowly. His face looked peaceful, but his arm was still bleeding through the bandage. Lyra had never been this close to a human before. She had seen them only in old news videos, tall, fierce warriors with weapons that could destroy cities. But this man looked tired, broken. She quietly boiled some water and made soup from the little food she had. When John finally opened his eyes, he blinked at the soft light above. "You're awake," she said gently, handing him the bowl. He took it with shaking hands. "Thank you," he whispered. "I didn't expect kindness here." Lyra smiled shyly. "Kindness doesn't cost much." John smiled back, but his eyes looked far away, as if seeing ghosts no one else could. As he ate, he told her small things. How his ship had crashed after a magnetic storm. How he had wandered through the forests for 2 days without food. But he never said why he was here or what his mission was. Lyra didn't ask. She could feel his pain even in silence. He looked around her small house. "You live alone?" She nodded. "Since my parents died?" They were engineers. I repair old machines now. He noticed the shelves full of broken metal parts, old tools, and a half-built robot sitting in the corner. "You're good with machines," he said. She shrugged. "Machines are easier than people. They don't laugh at you." John stared at her for a long time. "People laugh at you?" Her eyes fell to the floor. "They always have. I'm not what they call beautiful. Too heavy, too slow, too soft. But I don't care anymore." He wanted to say something, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, he just whispered, "You're not what they say." She blinked, surprised by his tone. No one had ever said that to her. Not once. Hours passed. John tried to stand but stumbled, clutching his side. Lyra quickly helped him sit again. When she touched his arm, he winced. That's when she saw it. A strange, glowing mark beneath the torn cloth. The symbol was red and shaped like 3 circles inside a triangle. She froze. "This mark?" John's eyes darkened. He quickly pulled his sleeve down. "It's nothing," but she knew that symbol. Everyone did. It was the mark of the Crimson War Division, the most feared human military group. The same soldiers who destroyed Zalara's southern colonies years ago. Her heart raced. She stepped back. You're one of them." John looked up, guilt in his eyes. "Not anymore." Before she could ask more, a loud buzzing filled the air. Lyra turned toward the window and saw drones flying over the colony, metallic eyes scanning every house. The warning sirens blared in the distance. "Attention! Human fugitive detected near Sector 12. Lyra gasped. Sector 12 was her area. John stood, his face pale. "They found me." She stared at him, trembling. "If they find you here, they'll—" "I know," he said quietly. "That's why I should go." He tried to move toward the door, but his legs gave out. He fell to his knees, coughing. Without thinking, Lyra ran to him. "No, you can't walk in this condition. They'll kill you out there." He looked up, his eyes tired and full of shame. "Then you'll die because of me." She shook her head. "No one will die tonight." She helped him up and guided him to a small hidden space behind her storage wall. Years ago, her father had built it as an emergency shelter. She opened the hatch and whispered, "Stay here. Don't make a sound." John hesitated. "Lyra, why are you helping me?" "You don't even know me." She looked at him softly. "Because no one ever helped me when I needed it." He stared at her, unable to speak. Slowly, he crawled inside, and she closed the hatch just as the drones buzzed outside her window. Moments later, a loud knock shook her door. Thump, thump. Lyra's heart pounded. A metallic voice spoke through the speaker. "Open up, routine check." She took a deep breath and opened the door. A tall patrol officer stood there holding a scanner. The device beeped loudly, flashing red. "Strange energy reading," the officer said. "Anyone else in here?" Lyra forced a calm smile. "Just me, I was making soup." "Maybe your machine smells it," the officer frowned. He stepped inside, looking around. His scanner beeped near the storage wall. Lyra's pulse raced. "That's just my generator," she said quickly. "It's old. Always leaking heat." The officer hesitated, then nodded. "Keep it fixed, citizen. Humans are dangerous. If you see one, report it immediately." "I will," she said quietly. When he left, Lyra closed the door and leaned against it, shaking. The drones moved away. The sirens faded. She knelt down, opened the hidden hatch, and whispered, "They're gone." John crawled out, breathing heavily. His voice was soft, almost a whisper. "You risked your life for me." Lyra smiled faintly, though tears shone in her eyes. "I told you kindness doesn't cost much." But as she said those words, a soft beep echoed from the scanner the officer had left behind near her door. It was still flashing red. She didn't notice. The night was heavy with fog. The streets of the alien colony were quiet, but every shadow seemed alive. From her small house, Lyra could hear the low hum of patrol drones sweeping through the air. Their red lights flashed like angry eyes searching for prey. She sat near the storage wall, her hands trembling. Inside that wall, hidden behind a thin metal panel, was John, the human she had saved. His breathing was slow but steady. She could hear it faintly, like a heartbeat inside her house. She pressed her palm against the cold wall and whispered, "They're still outside. Don't make a sound." He didn't answer, but she knew he heard her. Lyra had never been this scared before. One wrong move and the officers would burst in, take John away and maybe her too. She walked to her window and carefully peeked through the crack. Down the narrow alley, two soldiers were talking beside a patrol drone. "The scanner picked something in this area," one said. "If it's the human, we'll find him tonight," the other replied. Lyra's stomach twisted. She quickly turned away from the window, heart pounding. When the soldiers finally moved away, Lyra opened the hatch. John crawled out, pale and sweating. He looked weaker than before. "You need food," she said softly. "You can't survive like this." He smiled weakly. "You've done enough already." But she shook her head. "You're bleeding again." She tore a piece of cloth from her old blanket and began wrapping his arm. Her hands shook as she worked, but her eyes stayed calm. John looked at her carefully. "You're not afraid of me anymore?" Lyra paused for a second. "I was," she said honestly. "But now, I'm afraid for you." Her words hit him like a soft punch. No one had ever said that to him before. Later that night, as he rested, Lyra turned on her small communication pad. The colony news was showing an alert. Wanted, human fugitive from Earth. Name, John Arthen. Reward, 10,000 credits. Dangerous and armed. Her hands froze. She looked at the screen, then at John, sleeping under her blanket. His face looked peaceful, almost innocent. 1,000 credits could change her life. She could move out of this broken colony. She could finally be free from the mockery, from the loneliness. Her fingers hovered over the report button on the screen. Just one tap and the patrol would come. But when she looked back at him, she remembered the way he had said, "You're not what they say." The first person who ever saw her as more than a body. She closed the pad and whispered to herself, "No, I won't do it." Suddenly the door alarm beeped. 3 short beeps. Someone was outside. Lyra grabbed the small plasma wrench from her work table. She whispered quickly to John, "Hide again!" He nodded, slipping back into the hidden space just as the metal door buzzed open. A man stepped in. Not a soldier, but her neighbor, Sarah, holding a flashlight. His sharp eyes scanned the room. "Lyra," he said slowly. "The officers say a human might be near. They told us to report anything strange." Lyra forced a smile. "Nothing strange here. Just my machines," he sniffed the air. "Funny. I thought I saw footprints near your door. Big ones." Her throat went dry. "Maybe from the delivery man?" Sarah frowned. "There are no deliveries at night." For a moment, silence filled the air. The only sound was the rain dripping outside. Then Sarah stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You know, if someone hides a human, they could get punished. Or worse." Lyra looked him straight in the eyes. "Then why are you here, Sarah?" He smirked. "Because I don't want you to make a mistake. If you do have him, tell me. We can share the reward." Her eyes widened. "Reward?" He nodded, pulling out a hologram device. The same bounty ad glowed between them, John's face shining in red. Lyra's chest tightened. Sarah smiled coldly. "See? 10,000 credits. Half for me, half for you. Easy." Her voice was low. "Get out." He blinked. "What?" "I said get out of my house." Sarah's smile faded. "You're protecting him, aren't you?" Lyra didn't move. "Leave now." His eyes turned narrow. "Fine. But when the patrol comes tomorrow, don't say I didn't warn you." He left, the door hissing shut behind him. Lyra stood there, shaking. John crawled out of the hiding space. "He knows," he said quietly. Lyra nodded. "Yes, and he'll report us by morning." John looked at her with guilt. "I've brought danger to your door." She turned toward him, eyes shining with sudden courage. "Then we leave tonight." The rain outside had turned to mist. Lyra packed her few things, some food, her tools, and a small metal cube glowing faintly. "What is that?" John asked. She smiled. A signal core. My father built it to reach long distances, maybe even Earth. John's eyes widened. You could contact my people? Maybe, she said softly. If it still works. She handed him a cloak and opened the back door. The night air smelled like fear and freedom. Can you walk? She asked. He nodded. If you lead the way. Together, they stepped out into the dark streets, moving through the fog. Somewhere behind them, the drones were turning back, following the scanner's red glow to her house. But the house was empty now. The fog had not lifted even when the new sun rose. A weak golden light fell on the metal streets, and far away, the sound of patrol ships echoed like thunder. The hunt for the human had grown larger. Posters of John Arthur were flashing on every holoscreen across the colony. Inside an abandoned tunnel near the forest line, Lyra and John hid behind broken crates. Lyra's face was pale from exhaustion, but her eyes were full of fire. John sat against the wall, clutching his side. His wound had opened again, red lines spreading on the bandage. You should have left me, he said quietly. They'll punish you for this. Lyra shook her head. I've lived my whole life being punished for nothing. At least this time I want the reason to matter. Her words made him look up. For a moment their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Loneliness, recognizing loneliness. As the wind howled through the tunnel, Lyra checked the small metal cube she had brought, the signal core her father had built years ago. It glowed weakly in her palm. My father worked on communication systems, she explained softly. He said this core could reach any frequency in the galaxy. It just needs power. John stared at it, amazed. That's not ordinary tech. Humans used something similar during the war, but we thought all were destroyed. Lyra smiled faintly. My father was smarter than most. He hid things inside our home. Things the government never found. John raised an eyebrow. Inside your home? She nodded. There's a room. Behind the walls. Only I know about it, he frowned. A secret lab? Something like that, she whispered. If we can reach it, we can boost the signal and maybe contact your people. John's eyes lit up. You mean Earth? She nodded again. Or anyone who can help us before the patrols catch us. They waited until night fell again, then sneaked back toward the colony through the forest path. Every step was dangerous. Drones swept above them like silver bats, scanning the ground with red light. Lyra knew every shortcut, every shadow. She had lived invisible for years. It finally became useful. When they reached the backside of her small house, she pressed her hand on a metal panel hidden under the dirt. A soft hum answered. The wall slid open, revealing a narrow stairway going down. John stared. You weren't joking. I never joke about survival, she said with a small grin. They went down into the darkness. The air smelled of dust and oil. At the bottom, the lights flickered on automatically, showing a small underground room filled with strange machines, half alien, half human in design. John walked slowly, touching the old consoles. This is advanced tech, mixed designs. Your father must have worked with humans before the war. Lyra looked away. He did. That's why people hated us after he died. They said he was a traitor. John's heart ached hearing that. And now you're helping another human. You really don't learn, do you? She smiled sadly. Maybe I do. Maybe I just don't care. She placed the glowing cube into a round slot on one of the old devices. The machine hummed to life, screens lighting up with symbols. Blue lines ran through the cables, spreading across the walls like veins. John leaned closer. Can it still send a message? Yes, Lyra said. But the power drain will alert the patrol network. We'll have maybe 10 minutes before they track us. He nodded. 10 minutes is enough. She began typing on the console, her fingers moving quickly. The old system sparked but responded. A deep tone filled the room, followed by static. Signal open, she said. John leaned toward the mic. This is John Arthur, survivor of the 7th Earth Fleet, requesting extraction. Coordinates. Before he could finish, a robotic voice interrupted. John Arthur, identified. Status. Deceased. Both froze. The voice repeated, cold and metallic. Error. Transmitting from unauthorized channel. Alerting Central Command, Lyra gasped. They've locked the signal. The lights flickered red. Outside, the faint sound of sirens began to rise again. John looked around quickly. Shut it down. I can't, she cried. It's overriding itself. The machine began to shake. Sparks flew from the cables. Then amid the chaos, a faint voice came through the static. Different this time, soft and human. John, if you're alive, they'll come for you. Don't trust anyone, not even your own kind. Then the signal cut off completely. Lyra turned toward him breathless. Who was that? John's face went pale. My commander, but she died years ago. Before they could process it, a loud explosion shook the ground above them. Dust fell from the ceiling. They've found us, Lyra whispered. John grabbed a plasma pistol from the console. Get behind me. No, she said firmly. I started this. I'll end it with you. He stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. They turned toward the stairway as the sound of boots and drones filled the air. Red light shone through the cracks above. The underground lab shook as the entrance door burst open. Lyra and John turned sharply. Blinding white light flooded the room. Through the smoke stepped tall figures in black armor, their faces hidden behind silver masks. Red marks, 3 circles inside a triangle, shone on their chests. John's face went pale. Crimson Division? He whispered. The soldiers moved like machines, their voices flat. Target located. Human subject, John Arthon. Termination approved. Lyra grabbed John's arm. We have to run. But there was nowhere to go. The only exit was blocked. John raised his pistol, firing blue plasma bolts. The soldiers didn't even flinch. Their armor absorbed the shots like sand in a storm. They're not human, John muttered. They're drones made from human tech. Your tech? Lyra asked in shock. He nodded bitterly. Mine. Lyra pushed him toward the back wall. There's a maintenance shaft, she shouted. Go! John stumbled, clutching his wound while she covered him, throwing metal parts toward the intruders. Sparks filled the air. She hit the power grid switch, plunging the room into red emergency light. In the darkness, John reached the shaft and pulled her inside. The tunnel was narrow, filled with old cables and dust. They crawled through, hearing metal footsteps above them. When they finally reached the end, they slid out into the open forest. The night sky stretched above, full of twin moons and falling ash from the burning colony. John fell to his knees, coughing. They found me faster than I thought. Lyra's hands trembled. Why are they after you, John? Tell me the truth, he didn't answer. His eyes were distant, haunted. John, she said softly, I've risked everything for you. Don't lie to me. He turned his face toward her, guilt shining in his eyes. You deserve the truth. Even if it hurts, he took a deep breath. I wasn't just a soldier, Lyra. I was part of Project Crimson. Lyra frowned. The ones who destroyed half of Zalara? He nodded. We were told the alien colonies had weapons that could destroy Earth. My job was to disable their defense network. But when I did, our generals betrayed us. They launched the full strike anyway. Cities burned. Millions died, Lyra's voice cracked, including my brother. John froze. Your brother? She nodded, tears filling her eyes. He was a defense engineer. He died that day. The humans said it was necessary. My whole family believed your kind were monsters. John looked down, his voice breaking. I was there when the order was given. I tried to stop it, but they branded me a traitor. I ran before they could execute me. The Crimson Division you saw, they're not soldiers anymore. They're machines built from the bodies of the men who died under my command. Lyra stared at him, speechless. You built the monsters that killed my people, and now they hunt you too. John's eyes glistened. I never wanted this war, Lyra. I wanted peace. But humans, we destroy what we fear. For a long moment, neither spoke. Only the wind whispered through the trees. Finally, Lyra whispered, When you came to my door that night and said my name saved your life. What did you mean? John closed his eyes. When the bombing began, I was trapped under rubble. My suit's AI was damaged and I was dying. Then I heard a voice, a child singing a lullaby through an open frequency. It was a girl from Zalara. She kept repeating her name so the system would remember it. He looked at her gently. That name was Lyra, Lyra gasped. That was my brother's recording. I used to send him that lullaby when he worked nights. John smiled sadly. It kept me alive. Every time I wanted to give up, I remembered that soft voice. I thought maybe not all of your kind hated mine. Her tears fell silently. The world felt quiet, heavy with pain and old ghosts. Suddenly a low hum rose from the distance. Red lights glowed between the trees. The crimson drones had found their trail again. John stood, pulling out his pistol. They won't stop until we're both dead. Lyra wiped her tears and stood beside him. Then they'll have to fight us both. John stared at her in disbelief. You'd still fight for me? After everything I did? She looked at him with quiet strength. You didn't destroy my world? John, you saved me from mine. For the first time in years, he smiled, a small, broken smile filled with gratitude. The forest filled with the sound of metal marching. John loaded his weapon, standing shoulder to shoulder with her. We fight, we run, or we die together, she nodded. Together. The first drone appeared through the mist, its red eye glowing like a devil's heart. John raised his weapon. Lyra activated her father's signal core, flooding the air with static energy. The forest lit up with blue light, then silence. When Lyra opened her eyes, the world was white. No trees, no stars, no sound, only endless glowing light. She blinked, confused. John? Her voice echoed, but there was no answer. Her hands trembled as she looked around. There were no walls, just empty space and floating sparks like fireflies made of glass. Her heart raced. Where am I? Then a soft voice spoke behind her. Welcome, Lyra of Zalara. She turned quickly. A tall figure appeared, a woman in silver armor with long black hair and eyes like polished steel. Who are you? Lyra asked. The woman smiled faintly. You activated the signal core. You are now inside its memory field, Lyra frowned. Memory field? The woman nodded. This is where the signal stores the last moments of those it connected. The man you call John is still here, between life and death, Lyra's breath caught. He's alive? For now, the woman said. But his body is burning. You must decide if he deserves to live. Lyra stepped back, shocked. Decide? Why me? Because you carry both hate and hope. You are the balance he never had. Before Lyra could reply, the light around her shifted. The white space melted into flames, burning ruins of a city. The ground shook with distant explosions. And there, through the smoke, she saw John, younger, wearing a soldier's armor, standing in the middle of the destruction. He looked lost, his hands covered in ash and blood. Around him, alien children cried. Lyra's chest tightened. This is your memory, she whispered. John didn't see her. He was speaking to someone through his communicator. Command, the civilians are still here. You said the strike zone was empty. A cold voice replied. Orders are orders, Captain. Complete the mission. John dropped the communicator, horror on his face. No, I won't do it. But the bombs had already fallen. The flames roared louder. Lyra fell to her knees, tears in her eyes. She saw herself as a little girl in the crowd crying beside her brother. This is what he did, she whispered bitterly. He destroyed everything. The silver-armored woman's voice echoed again, soft but firm. He also disobeyed the final command. He tried to stop it. He failed, but he carried that guilt until today. Lyra's tears fell faster. The fire began to fade, replaced again by white light. Now John appeared before her, older, wounded, just as she last saw him. He looked weak, kneeling on the ground. Lyra, he whispered, I didn't want you to see that. She looked at him, torn between pain and pity. Why didn't you tell me before? I was ashamed, he said quietly. I thought if you knew you'd hate me. I did hate you, she said, her voice shaking. But I also believed you were different. He smiled faintly. Then maybe I'm both. The light around them dimmed. The silver woman appeared again, watching silently. John turned toward her. Please, let her go. She has nothing to do with my past. The woman shook her head. She is already part of your future. Only her choice can close this link. Lyra looked between them, confused. What choice? Forgive him, the woman said. And the system will release his soul back to life. Refuse, and he will stay here forever. Lyra froze. The room fell silent. John bowed his head. You don't owe me forgiveness, Lyra. I destroyed your world. Maybe this is what I deserve. She stared at him for a long moment. The memory of her brother's smile flashed before her eyes. Then she remembered John's tired face at her door, his gentle voice saying, Kindness doesn't cost much. Her chest ached. You can't undo what you did, she whispered. But you saved me. You gave me hope when everyone else gave me shame. John looked up, tears glistening. I don't deserve your kindness. She stepped closer. No one ever does. That's why it's powerful. She placed her hand on his chest. I forgive you, John Arthon. The light exploded around them. The white world shattered like glass, replaced by roaring fire and wind. Lyra gasped as she felt her body pulled upward. like falling and flying at the same time. When she opened her eyes again, she was back in the real world, inside the forest. Smoke filled the air. The crimson drones lay destroyed, sparks flickering from their broken frames. John lay on the ground beside her, motionless. She crawled to him, shaking his shoulder. "John, wake up!" He groaned softly, eyes fluttering open. "Lyra?" She laughed through her tears. "You're alive." He touched her hand weakly. "You brought me back," she smiled, wiping her face. "No, you brought us back." Far away, the night sky glowed red with distant fires. The colony was burning, but for the first time Lyra didn't feel fear. She felt free. John tried to stand but stumbled. She caught him, holding him steady. He looked at her and whispered, "I'm sorry, for everything." She squeezed his hand. "Then live. That will be your apology." The first light of dawn crept over the burning horizon of Zilara. The twin suns rose together, painting the sky in gold and red. Smoke curled above the destroyed colony, and in the distance, faint sirens echoed like the cries of ghosts. But far from the ruins, in the quiet green valley beyond the mountains, Lyra and John walked slowly through the mist. John's uniform was torn, his wounds half-healed. Lyra supported him with one arm, her clothes stained with dust and ash. Each step hurt, but it was the kind of pain that reminded them they were still alive. For the first time in her life, Lyra felt no fear of the sunrise. They stopped near a clear blue lake that reflected the two suns. John sat on a rock, breathing heavily. Lyra crouched beside him, washing his wound with cold water. He watched her silently for a while, then smiled weakly. "You saved me again." She shook her head. "No, we saved each other." The world around them was strangely calm. The war sounds were far away now. Only the wind moved through the tall grass and the sound of birds echoed softly. John stared at the sky. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "I never noticed it before." "You were always fighting," Lyra said. "People who fight forget how to look up." He smiled faintly. "And people who are mocked forget how to smile." She looked at him, surprised. "How do you always know what to say?" He shrugged. "Maybe because I spent too long with silence." They both laughed softly, a quiet, broken laugh, but real. Lyra took the small signal core from her pocket. It was cracked and flickering, the last blue light blinking weakly. "Can it still send messages?" John asked. "Not anymore," she said sadly. "It used all its power saving us." He nodded. "Then maybe it did its job." She looked at him curiously. "What do you mean?" He smiled. "It connected two people who were never meant to meet. It carried guilt, pain, and somehow turned it into hope." Lyra's eyes softened. "You talk like someone who believes in fate." He chuckled quietly. "After everything I've seen, I think I have to." The soft moment didn't last long. A sudden humming sound filled the air. Lyra stood quickly. "Drones." 3 silver drones appeared from the clouds, scanning the valley with red beams. Their robotic voices echoed, "Target confirmed." "Capture the female alive." Lyra froze. "They're after me now." John pulled his blaster and took cover behind a rock. "They won't take you." "John, you're still weak." "I've been weak my whole life when it mattered most," he said. "Not today." He fired, hitting the first drone, which exploded in a burst of light. The other 2 fired back, blue plasma bolts slicing the air. Lyra ducked, feeling the heat pass her face. John hit the second drone, but the last one dived fast, its claw extending toward Lyra. She screamed as it grabbed her wrist, dragging her upward. John ran forward, jumped, and fired again, hitting the drone's engine. It exploded midair, throwing them both into the lake. Water splashed high. When Lyra opened her eyes, she was lying on the shore. The morning light glowed over the water. John was beside her, half in the lake, not moving. "John!" she cried, crawling to him. She shook his shoulder. "John, wake up!" He groaned softly, coughing water. "Still here," he said weakly. She laughed and cried at the same time. "Don't ever do that again." He smiled faintly. "I'll try, but I make no promises." She pressed her forehead against his, whispering, "You're impossible." He looked into her eyes. The same eyes that once feared him, now filled with warmth. "And you're the reason I want to live." They sat there quietly, the water lapping against their legs, the world finally silent. Hours later, when the suns climbed higher, They found a small cottage hidden near the valley edge. It was old, built by wanderers long ago. Lyra pushed open the door. Inside was dust, but also peace. John smiled faintly. Feels like home. She looked at him, her heart softening. Home isn't a place, John, it's a feeling. He nodded. Then I found mine. They cleaned the little house together, patching the windows, setting up firewood, and hanging the signal core by the window. It no longer worked, but its faint blue light still glowed softly at night like a memory that refused to die. Days passed. The war outside continued, but it never reached their valley. People began whispering stories of a human and an alien woman who disappeared together into the mountains. Some called them traitors. Some called them legends. But for Lyra and John, the world had already changed. Every morning he would fix broken parts, and she would hum the same lullaby that once saved his life. Sometimes, he would look at her and say, "You were never too fat to be loved," and she would smile softly, replying, "You were just too blind to see love." They would both laugh, the sound echoing through the valley. One evening, as the sun set, John looked toward the sky. "If there's another war," he said quietly, "I'll fight again, but this time for something worth saving." Lyra touched his hand. "Then fight for peace." "Fight for us," he nodded, eyes shining with tears. "Always." As the stars began to appear, Lyra leaned her head on his shoulder. The world was scarred, but for them, it had started anew. The twin suns faded behind the hills, and their shadows blended as one.